Welcome to the deep dive. We spend so much time online these days work, life, everything. It's incredible, really. But it also kind of blurs that line, doesn't it, between like peacetime and, well, something else. Cyber stuff isn't just tech issues now, it's right at the heart of these modern hybrid threats. So we've been digging into the latest intel, specifically the CERTSI weekly brief for week 22, 2025. Our plan today is to really dive into that report, pull out the key things you need to know about what's happening right now in the hybrid threat world. We'll get into the new state players popping up, where our critical systems are looking shaky, how attackers keep changing their tactics, and what's being done to fight back. It's a busy scene.
Yeah, and you look at this report, and it's funny, isn't it? Sweden's just put out this big new digitalization strategy all about AI, data progress, but then boom, the same week's report is full of escalating threats. It really hits home that it's a double-edged sword. More digital, more opportunity, sure, but also, well, way more places to get hit.
Exactly. And this week's report lays it out so clearly, all the different fronts in this hybrid conflict. You've got the constant hum of state-backed activity, the spying, the influence campaigns. You see critical infrastructure, CNI, getting poked and prodded, sometimes hit hard. Attackers are always innovating, sometimes super sophisticated, sometimes surprisingly basic stuff that works. And then you see the defenders, nationally and internationally, trying to, keep up. It's all connected. It's this complex hybrid picture.
Okay, so let's start with those state actors. The report flagged some pretty big moves this week, right?
Definitely. A major piece was from Dutch intelligence, identifying a new Russian state-backed group. They're calling it Laundry Bear, also known as Void Blizzard. Seems like they've been busy since 2024, mainly focusing on EU and NATO countries. Their target list is quite broad, but makes sense strategically. Defense, military embassies, sure, but also high-tech firms may be looking for ways around sanctions, and government ministries, NGOs, media universities, basically anyone with info that Russia might find useful, especially about the war in Ukraine.
Okay, Laundry Bear, and how are they operating? What are their TTPs?
Well, what's interesting is they're not necessarily relying on super advanced 0 days. It's more about non-destructive espionage. So getting into email systems, exchange seems to be a favorite, and then just hoovering up data. Emails, global address lists, that kind of thing. They use pretty standard stuff, phishing, password spraying, and a lot of living off the land.
Using the tools already on the system makes them harder to spot.
Exactly. Blends in with normal activity. And they work fast, high tempo, hitting lots of targets. They're seen as distinct from, say, APT-28, even if there are overlaps.
Using simple tools at scale, living off the land. It sounds like industrial espionage almost, trying to stay under the radar while grabbing intel. How does that fit the hybrid definition?
That is the hybrid angle. It's classic espionage, sure. But it directly fuels strategic aims intel for military planning, political moves against NATO, understanding sanction impacts. Using simpler, scalable methods possibly lowers their risk of definite attribution, while still giving them potentially huge data access. And getting emails and contacts isn't just about reading messages. It's ammo for future, more targeted attacks, maybe disruptive ones down the line, or economic intel from those tech firms. It really shows how sometimes the biggest threats aren't the most technically flashy ones. It's the persistent exploitation of basic security gaps across the board. Good cyber hygiene. That's national security now.
And Russia wasn't the only state actor making headlines. China-linked groups were busy too.
They were indeed. A big focus was on exploiting Ivanti Endpoint Manager Mobile, or EPMM. That's software lots of places use to manage phones and tablets. They were hitting critical vulnerabilities, CVE 2025, 4427, and 4428. These basically let them run code on the system remotely without even needing a password. Serious stuff.
Wow, who were they targeting with that?
It was global. A real mix. Government, healthcare, telecoms, finance, manufacturing, aviation. Across Europe, North America, Asia-Pacific, wide net. And their methods here seem, a bit more sophisticated than Laundry Bear's. They really understood the Avanti system. They were clever about using legitimate parts of the system to sneak data out. PII, credentials, data tech. We saw specific malware like Krusty Loader and Sliver being used, plus tools like fast reverse proxy to maintain that hidden access.
And they link this back to China.
Yeah, the attribution came from things like reusing infrastructure, known to be used by China-linked actors previously. Pretty strong indicators.
Getting into a mobile management system like that sounds like it gives attackers huge potential access. What's the hybrid implication there?
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah.
This is clearly strategic espionage, aiming for economic, tech, political advantage, classic intelligence goals we associate with China. If you compromise the system managing thousands of mobile devices, Well, potentially, each of those devices becomes a listening post, right? In
Yeah.
government, in healthcare, for critical industries.
That's chilling.
It is. And targeting healthcare and government specifically, that hits public trust hard. The level of technical skill needed, exploiting 0 days, using the system against itself. That points to significant resources, likely state backing. It also highlights just how critical these central management systems are. They're juicy targets because one breach can cascade downwards into so many other networks and devices.
And these aren't just technical incidents happening in a vacuum. We're seeing real diplomatic fallout, aren't we?
Absolutely. The report mentioned the EU's response to an attack on Czech networks, which they publicly attributed to China. That led to a formal EU statement condemning the action, even hinting at countermeasures. It shows cyber attacks are now firmly on the geopolitical stage, forcing discussions about international norms. Naming and shaming is part of the toolkit.
And direct influence campaigns, too.
Right. Meta reported disrupting networks from Iran, China, and Romania. These weren't just dumb bots. They used fake personas, maybe even AI-generated profile pictures, working across multiple platforms, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. They were pushing narratives, trying to stir things up around the Paris Olympics, organizing boycotts, criticizing politicians, messing with local elections. Classic hybrid influence ops.
Using AI to make fake profiles. That feels like the next evolution.
It definitely makes them more convincing, harder to spot. And spreading the message across different sites amplifies it. It's a direct attack on public trust and information integrity. And AI tools are getting easier to access, making these campaigns more scalable.
Okay, shifting gears a bit from espionage and influence. Critical infrastructure. Still a major target based on this report.
Always. It's a constant because hitting CNI has such immediate wide-ranging effects. Society, economy, public confidence, it hits them all. This week, there was the Nova Scotia Power ransomware attack in Canada. A power company got hit.
Did the lights go out?
Thankfully, no. Power generation wasn't disrupted. But they stole customer data. A lot of it. Around 280,000 customers had personal info, stolen names, dates of birth, contact details, even SINs and bank account numbers in some cases. And because the company didn't pay the ransom, the attackers published the data.
Ouch. So even without an outage, there's major impact.
Precisely. That's the hybrid angle. Stealing sensitive data from a CNI operator, even if the service keeps running, massively erodes public trust. And think about what that data could be used for: consumption patterns, addresses, may be useful for planning future attacks, physical or cyber. The data itself is a weapon. Plus, it's that double extortion playbook we see so often now. Lock the systems and steal the data. Huge pressure, especially on essential services.
And similar things happening in the UK's health service.
Yes, data theft hit 2 NHS trusts, University College, London hospitals, and Southampton. This time it was staff data. Things like phone numbers, device IMEI numbers, and crucially, technical stuff like authentication tokens.
Authentication tokens, that sounds bad.
It is. The concern is that we could give attackers a way into patient records or even allow them to run malicious code on hospital systems. Healthcare is so critical, so personal. Attacks create fear, disrupt care, destroy trust. Stealing staff credentials and tokens is a foothold for deeper compromise. Patient data is incredibly sensitive. And stealing technical data suggests they might be mapping things out for a bigger attack later. It hits right at the core of societal trust and safety.
And the report brought this closer to home, too, mentioning concerns around some key systems here in Sweden.
That's right. An SVT article was highlighted questioning the reliance on systems like Bankit and Swish after some recent disturbances or disruptions. Swish's own status page showed incidents on May 25th and 7th, and there were related issues impacting banks and Bankit around then, too.
So the worry is about relying too heavily on just a couple of platforms.
Exactly. It's about systemic risk. When almost everyone depends on one or two systems for vital things like ID and payments, it creates potential single points of failure. Even temporary outages can cause chaos for commerce, shake public confidence in the financial system, and have knock-on economic effects. These big, centralized systems are obviously prime targets if someone wants to cause maximum disruption. It's that classic tension. Convenience versus resilience.
It really feels like attackers have a huge range of tools and they're always adapting. What stood out this week in terms of evolving methods?
Well, one huge item was this massive data leak. A database with over 184 million passwords, emails, login links just found sitting exposed online.
184 million. Wow, where did that come from?
It looks like it was harvested by InfoStealer malware, probably LumaStealer, and the data wasn't encrypted plain text. It included logins for everything: Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, banks, health services, even government portals.
The impact of something like that must be enormous.
Absolutely. It's fuel for account takeovers, identity theft, targeted spying, ransomware.
Yeah.
You name it. It just degrades digital trust across the board. Government portal logins leaking. That's a direct national security issue. It's a massive flashing sign saying, use MFA, use strong passwords.
Wow.
It also shows how the cybercrime world feeds these bigger threats. Data stolen by criminals becomes a resource for, well, potentially anyone, including state actors.
And you mentioned the line blurring between crime and state actors. There was a big takedown this week related to that.
Yes, the Danabot malware network, part of a big international police action called Operation Endgame. 16 people charged in the U.S. Danabot was run as malware as a service, infecting hundreds of thousands of PCs, causing maybe $50 million in damages. Mostly financial crime stuff, stealing data, bank logins, credentials.
Okay, so criminal operation.
Primarily, yes. But here's the twist the report noted.
Okay.
There was a second version of Danabot specifically designed and used for spying on military, diplomatic, and government targets.
Ah, so the same criminal infrastructure being repurposed for state espionage. That's telling.
It really is. These mass platforms lower the barrier to entry for sophisticated attacks. And when you see one version being tweaked for state intelligence, it shows how intertwined these worlds can be. Criminal networks can be a source of tools, infrastructure, maybe even talent for state operations. Taking down these platforms hits both.
Any really creative or maybe low-tech tactics that jumped out?
Yeah, quishing was mentioned. That's QR code phishing, but done physically.
Physically.
And criminals are literally taping malicious QR codes onto things in public places, lampposts, parking meters, maybe with a little note saying something intriguing like scan for evidence of cheating to lure people in.
Huh. That's clever. In a devious way.
It is. It's low-tech delivery, but completely bypasses digital filters. It plays on curiosity and the fact we scan QR codes all the time now without thinking. It shows attackers innovating to find gaps. As digital security gets better, they look for ways to bridge that physical-digital divide using psychology. Awareness is the main defense there. And there were other things too, abusing GitHub to host malware, hiding in plain sight, abusing OneDrive permissions, finding persistent backdoors in AC's routers using legitimate features, even surviving updates, new rats for Windows hiding better. It's all about abusing trust and legitimate tools.
Okay, so given all that, what are the defenders doing? What strategic responses did the report highlight?
Well, nationally here in Sweden, the new digitalization strategy for 2025-2030 was launched. It aims to set a clear path, focusing on AI, security, and data. And importantly, ensuring Sweden's security is explicitly listed as a goal. Separate AI and cloud strategies are coming too.
Putting security right up there with AI and data seems significant.
It is. It's government acknowledging that progress and risk management have to go together. A national strategy gives a framework for building resilience. Planning specific policies for AI and cloud shows they're thinking about where the next big vulnerabilities might lie. Of course, implementation is everything, but the strategic intent is right.
Any more specific sector-focused actions?
Yes. The new Energy Cert Sweden started up in April. It's a dedicated cert just for energy companies. The idea is to help them prevent and handle incidents, share info, coordinate responses. It works alongside other tools like MSB's cybersecurity for CNI.
Focusing on energy makes sense, given it's such a prime target.
Absolutely. A dedicated cert strengthens that sector's collective defense. Energy has unique needs, mixing IT and OT, operational technology. It's a critical step for protecting a core hybrid target.
And looking internationally, what about NATO?
There's a proposal within NATO to formally count cybersecurity spending as part of a new, broader defense-related spending goal. They're suggesting that investments in cyber, plus border security, CNI protection, non-military intel, space, should count towards a potential 1.5% of GDP target, part of a bigger 5% overall defense aim.
So treating cyber as core defense spending like tanks and planes?
Pretty much. It's a formal recognition that cyber is a key domain of national and alliance security now. It could drive serious investment. It's NATO adapting its definition of defense for the 21st century, which includes these hybrid threats. There's also mention of securing new tech, specifically U.S. government guidance on protecting AI training data.
AI training data, why is that important?
Because AI models can be both targets and tools in hybrid conflicts. If an attacker can mess with the data used to train an AI, maybe subtly bias it, or steal sensitive info from it, that's a huge problem. This guidance covers things like checking data origin, using encryption, controlling access, secure storage, basically building security into the AI pipeline from the start. It shows high-level concern about AI vulnerabilities as it gets used in more critical areas. And one last very practical readiness point, the looming end of support for Microsoft Exchange Server 2016 and 2019. That's October 14th, 2025. No more security updates after that.
The ticking time bomb scenario.
Exactly. Unpatched Exchange servers are like an open door for attackers, state actors, criminals, everyone loves them, espionage, ransomware, disruption. It's all easier. Organizations have to migrate off these. It's basic lifecycle management, but failing to do it creates a massive predictable risk. A real hybrid threat opportunity for adversaries.
Okay, before we wrap up, the report usually has some brief notes on other incidents. Anything else quick worth flagging?
Yeah, just a few quick hits that reinforce the themes. An Adidas data breach via third-party supply chain risk again. Apple blocking $9 billion in fraud just shows the sheer scale of badness out there. Luma InfoStealer, still active despite takedowns, shows how resilient this criminal infrastructure is. Silent Ransom Group using callback phishing against law firms, tailored attacks on high-value targets, a new PumaBot botnet hitting Linux IoT devices exploiting easy targets, another alleged AT&T data leak rumor, more massive PII breach risk. It's just relentless pressure from all sides.
So, pulling it all together from this week's snapshot.
It paints a picture of a really dynamic, sophisticated, and frankly, quite dangerous hybrid threat landscape. You've got state actors like Laundry Bear and the China Group playing long games, strategically collecting intel, seeking leverage. Critical infrastructure is constantly under pressure, not just for disruption, but for data theft and undermining trust. Attackers keep evolving, blending physical and digital like quishing, abusing trusted platforms, using the criminal ecosystem. Data is the gold they're after, and AI is clearly the next big frontier, both as a tool and a target.
And the outlook based on this.
It confirms that blurring line between state and criminal actors. Expect more CNI attacks focused on psychological and societal impact, influence ops getting smarter with AI, and our interconnected digital supply chains, still a major weak point.
So for you listening, what's the takeaway? I mean, these threats aren't just abstract government reports. They affect your accounts, the services you rely on. Vigilance isn't just for the pros, it's for everyone. Being proactive, cooperation between sectors, adapting constantly, it's essential. This landscape changes so fast, staying informed is, well, it's step one.
Yeah, figuring out how to navigate this digital world safely. It's fundamental now. This report shows the sharp end of the challenges. Maybe the question for you is, what does this mean for your readiness? Personally or in your job?
That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the CERTC Week 22 report. We hope it's given you a clearer picture of the hybrid threats out there. Until next time.